Opeyemi Sowore, wife of the detained presidential candidate of the African Action Congress, Omoyele Sowore, on Wednesday, 4th September, spoke against the detention of her husband by the Department of State Services. Opeyemi, in an interview with Democracy Now!, an online news platform, claimed the Nigerian government had no evidence against her husband and no grounds for detention. She also claimed the government's allegation against her husband for taking money from international countries and holding a meeting in Dubai are false, as her husband has never been to Dubai. Opeyemi also lamented on the torture of her husband as he has been left in isolation for over a month.
We turn now to Nigeria, where journalist and pro-democracy activist Omoyele Sowore is entering his second month in jail for calling for peaceful nationwide protests against the government. Sowore called his movement Revolution Now and mobilized activists to take to the streets on August 5th. But just 2 days before the protests were set to begin, he was arrested by the state and accused of attempting to take over the government. He's been in prison for more than a month now as human rights groups continue to call for his immediate release. He's a human rights activist and the publisher of the online news site Sahara Reports, based in New York City, and has lived in the United States for many years. He ran against President Muhammadu Buhari earlier this year in an election he said lacked a level playing field. His party, Africa Action Congress, declared August 5th the start of the Days of Rage, inspired by the recent popular uprising in Sudan that toppled the authoritarian ruler Omar al-Bashir. The protests went ahead despite his arrest days earlier.
Shortly before Sowore was arrested, he tweeted, "All that's needed for a revolution is for the oppressed to choose a date they desire for liberty, not subjected to the approval of the oppressor." Hashtag Revolution Now, hashtag Days of Rage, hashtag August 5th. This is Omoyele Sowore speaking about Revolution Now at a rally in Nigeria in July.
Are you not tired of this government? We are tired. Are you not tired of hunger? We are tired. Are you not tired of no unemployment? We are tired.
A coalition of press freedom organizations and human rights groups recently petitioned the United Nations and the African Union, while a group called the African Renaissance Organization sent a petition to the U.S. State Department asking the U.S. government to apply pressure on President Muhammadu Buhari for Sowore's release. For more, we're joined by Omoyele Sowore's wife, Opeyemi Sowore, and one of his attorneys, Nana Jensen-Reventlow, the founding director of the Digital Freedom Fund. She's at Columbia Law School. Opeyemi Sowore and Nina Jensen-Reventlow, welcome to Democracy Now! It's great to have you with us.
Thanks for having us.
You were here when Sowore was arrested in Nigeria, and I have to say I personally know Sowore very well. I traveled with him in Nigeria when we went to cover the U.S. oil company's involvement in the Niger Delta and what they were doing there. He has been deeply involved with human rights and in covering his country of Nigeria, though a green card holder here. So when did you learn what happened, and what are you demanding now?
Sure. It was Friday night here, Saturday, in Nigeria. I got a text from him saying, "I love you." And I'm like, okay, great, I love you too. But his cousin started calling me over and over about an hour after that and told me that he'd been detained. And for 3 days, we did not have any contact with him. We didn't know where he was. He was taken by force at his hotel and in Lagos and transported to Abuja. And
the capital
of Nigeria. And of course, he didn't eat their food, didn't drink their water for all those days. He was basically in isolation with no food, no water. But then on the Tuesday after, he was able to get in touch with his lawyer, as well as they allowed people to come in to provide him with food. But since then, he's basically been in isolation for over a month, being held in Abuja with basically no outlets. He's basically locked in a room for the most part.
And the formal charges against him are based on?
There are no formal charges per se. He's being investigated. So the courts gave the Nigerian government or the DSS the ability to hold him for 45 days to investigate treason, possible treason and terrorism. They based it upon a meeting that he had with Nnamdi Kanu, who has an organization around Biafra. He met with him. Yele made it public. In fact, he disagrees with some of Nnamdi's rhetoric, but he met with him. And Yele's whole thing is bringing in everybody's voices so that Nigeria can be a country for pretty much all of its citizens. So that's one of the things that they mentioned against him. They also mentioned he may have taken money from international countries, and he met them in Dubai. He has never been to Dubai before, which was an interesting statement on the Nigerian government's part, and no money basically has been found with him. So those were some of the things that they've mentioned and associated with him, but they basically have no grounds for holding him and haven't found